So I was thinking earlier today about how long I've known this individual for, kind of through people, and I have no idea. I feel like as long as I've been doing stuff, I've kind of had friends in common with you and been aware of what you're doing and everything. And I don't know where that connection exactly comes from, but it's connected, and that's the point. Kristian Harloff from Schmo's Nose, from the movie trivia, Schmoedown from the internet
Yeah.
is here. Welcome, man. How are you?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me. It is funny because I was trying to figure out the same thing, and I don't know if it was a connection through like Roxy Stryer or just like mutual friends through like the wrestling world, or I don't know what it was, but I just know that when we were running our WrestleMania for Schmoedown is essentially called the Schmoedown Spectacular, and I remember sending that to you.
Yes.
I think it was the first one we ever did, and you watched it. And you gave me your thoughts on it, which I thought was really cool because we didn't really know each other at that point, and then we just kind of kept in contact. So it's good to talk to you.
Yeah, you too, man. Yeah, and it was like, okay, I knew there was an Afterbuzz connection, you know, and Kevin Undergaro and me go back forever, and a Roxy Stryer connection, and a wrestling connection, and a comedy connection. So it's like I feel like, you know, just in the Venn diagram of life, you just chalk it up to, yeah, I know that guy. Yeah,
right. And it's a small neighborhood. The entertainment, especially with podcasting, too, is a very small neighborhood that eventually you run into each other one way or another. But yeah, I'm sure through Kevin and then Roxy for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I always get interested in people doing what you're doing and stories like yours, in the sense that obviously I'm super interested in this idea. And I think that now is really the only time that you could really do it, I guess, as easily as people can do it now. But this idea of almost creating an empire, right, around the things that you're just into, like that stuff that used to be, well, I get home from work and the stuff that makes me happy is like geeking out over movies or watching wrestling or whatever it is. There's now all these avenues that people can take to make that like, no, what if I just inundate my life with that part of it?
Yeah.
And just try to turn something into it. And I feel like that's the whole point behind what you're doing now.
It's also obsession.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
Dude, it's obsession. Like, you ask my wife and she's like, yeah, it's definitely obsession. Like it's that thing where, you know, you have an idea and you want to just make it work and you do anything that you can. You got to believe in it. You know, if you don't believe in it, then it's not worth anything. But, and that was the thing. I just had to, and I'm sure you've gone through it. Anybody in this space has gone through it, where people tell you, oh, wait, I'm going to start my own podcast. I'm going to get a job in wrestling. No, you're not. You're not going to be able to do that. No, I am. I'm going to be able to do it. You're going to create a trivia show that's going to be a sport. No, you're not. And then if you believe in it, then you can make it happen. And that's kind of what I've been trying to do. And yes, the digital age, strangely enough, even though, because we were doing live events across the country, and we were selling out places. We went to Chicago last year during Star Wars Celebration. It was like 1,000 people in there, and I was like, oh, that's it. This is all I want to do is live events. And COVID said, well, no, you can't do live events. You got to figure out something else. And we had to do that, and we had the most competitive year so far this year through the digital era.
Well, that's that. I mean, but it's the same skill set, right? It's like the same kind of tools that you use to figure out how to make it work in the first place are those tools that you go back on to go, well, now I got to use these tools. Now I figure out how to make this work.
Right.
I have to use those same tools to figure out how to make it work in a time when it shouldn't be working.
Yeah. So yesterday, Kevin Smith is going to be competing in our in the Schmoedown coming up here, and he was on the show yesterday to promote the match against Chris Jericho, and he said something. I mean, he's just an inspiring dude all the way around. And when he was on, and he said something that I related to very much, and he's like, you're in this place and you could give up on yourself or you could pivot. Right. And, you know, and that's what I've been forced to do for the majority of my career is to pivot and to find something else to try to make work. And that's exactly what we did. And I'm lucky enough because we have a lot of like really talented people that are competing right now and really into it, because the shift, and it's funny, Sam, because it actually goes back to our text exchange or our DM exchange from years back, where I had sent you it, and I had sent you a lot of the storylines. You're like, well, what if it was just like them focusing on the trivia and not as much on the storylines? I'm like, That's the show. But the funny thing is, though, is that I pivoted from, I still do the storylines and I still have those bigger characters, but we went full esports with it. Like we did a full on, we did a draft at the Comedy Store where there was 120 players, there's trades, there's free agency, there's like, you know, the fantasy teams, and we went full sports with it. So it's a combination of both. And it's watching it. You have to look for the evolution.
Yeah, and you also have to, you have to know when something that maybe you didn't think people would be interested in, people will be interested in. Like that's like when I was watching it in kind of the infancy stages, I was like, I get where the storyline stuff is fun and that it should always be there, like an element of that. But as I'm watching, I'm like, I really care throughout the course of the show. I'm now really caring about these people. I actually care who gets the trivia answers right. I don't, and once you don't need kind of the over the top storylines and you're going, no, I'm invested. I'm literally invested in this movie trivia contest because I love movies, but I love competition and the whole thing. Right. And I think that's what I saw.
Yeah. And it's funny because it's like there are definitely, I have run into a lot of people with that similar opinion. And then I've also found the opposite opinion was that they got invested into the trivia because of the over the top storylines, because they found a guy like, we have this guy, Andrew Guy, who is one of our, he was the biggest heel that we've ever had. And we've did physical violence with him 3 times in Booker. We went to Booker T's arena in Houston and Andrew Guy got hit by a chair and Booker was involved in the storyline. And it's one of my most favorite things that we've ever done. But it's because of him that, I mean, there was this other kid, Paul Oyama, who at the time, again, was a heel, but because of all these antics that he was doing, when we were in New York, they booed him out of the building when he walked through, and it got the cheers for this other competitor who normally didn't get these types of cheers. It heightened it up. So it's like sometimes it depends on the competitors, and other times it's like, okay, just rely on the trivia, or there's this elaborate storyline and these characters that I like. So that's what I love about it, is that there's something for everyone.
And sometimes certain things work better for certain people, right? Like there are certain people when they're trying to do some goofy thing, you're like, this is really coming across cheesy. Like just answer some movie questions. Yep. And then other people going, you're so damn entertaining. Yeah, like if you just do that, just put yourself through a table or something. Just it's kind of like the Insane Clown Posse. Yeah, where the Insane Clown Posse was like, well, everybody likes our music, but we like wrestling. So what if halfway through our concert, Shaggy Two Dope just climbed up onto a ladder and threw himself through a table? Yes. And like the Insane Clown Posse fans were like, that's awesome.
Right. That's exactly right. There are some people that's like, no, you can't do, no one's going to buy you doing that, because I run a circus. I asked to run a circus. I asked to run a wrestling federation, and I do because there is no difference. And I know you know it when you see the locker room and you see the types of personalities who wants to get over and who thinks that, they're not going to, that their story isn't going the way that they want to. I get that all of the time. And I get people pitching characters ideas and pitching this and pitching that. But the beauty of what I do is that the game dictates the story. It's like, that's what I get challenged with all the time, is that it's like choose your own adventure. So I got to know. So using Andrew Guy as another example, is Andrew Guy played against Dan Murrell, who's the best player. He's like the Michael Jordan of the movie trivia Schmoedown. He's like a 4-time champion. He's incredible. And this was like the Buster Douglas moment. Andrew Guy defeated him, and it was the only time that I was watching a match, and I'm watching it going, okay, well, Dan's going to win, and then we're going to have him play Sam Levine live in Los Angeles. I can see the awning now. And then Guy won, and in my head, I saw that awning just go on fire, just set up on fire. And I was like, I can't do that anymore. I have to know at all times. It's more like the Dana White mentality than anything else. Of just like, okay, well, I know that that's the super fight that I want, but I might not get that, and I've got to be able to build this fighter instead.
Right. It's driving you crazy that you're in a shoot movie trivia competition.
Yes.
You're like, if I could just work this, it would be so much. It would be so much more up my alley. Like you do 100%. On some level, you want to just run a circus, and you're like, well, I guess I have to have the movie trivia in there because that's kind of the nucleus of it.
Yes.
But the circus is my part.
That's what I've always kind of gravitated for, because I like building these larger than life characters. But it's the sports side of me that also says I like to watch when the game's like really good, and you, like you were saying before, when you're really invested in it and you're watching how, like so I grew up in Queens, and my buddies came to see, we did a show in Brooklyn. We've done 3 shows in New York, and my friends came to see it, kids I grew up with in New York. and they weren't familiar with the characters or anything too, but they were on the edge of their seat watching them play because my friend said to me, dude, I felt like I was at a football game and a guy kept catching these crazy catches. I'm like, how does he do that? Because these questions that my friends don't know, like who directed this 1973, whatever. And they're like, I didn't know that answer, but this guy answered it in like 3 seconds. That's the type of stuff that when people, if I always say, if the spelling bee can be considered a sport, if esports took off, this certainly can be considered a sport. You just think movie trivia and you think, oh, bar trivia. It's anything but that. It's competitive mental sports.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's what I was thinking about, actually. You know, part of, I think, what's made the Schmoedown successful is your ability to make it into a business as well. And I don't understand how you pitch this to, like, because I mean, you know, Schmoedown has existed and you've existed. It's not always just been your own brand. You've existed through other brands. You've had to sell your product and who you are and what you bring to the table to whether it was Collider, whether it was whoever else you were working with at the time.
Yeah.
And in that moment, like, you have to be able to sell a person. I mean, and not to mention when you get a celebrity involved, when you get a Chris Jericho involved, when you get a Kevin Smith involved. And at first, before they see it, because once you see it, you kind of get it, right?
Yeah.
But when you're in a room and you're just trying to explain to either an investor or somebody like that, why what you're doing is more than just, I'm just a guy who's down on his luck who wants to make more out of movie trivia than I'm actually doing. Like, how do you get past that point, especially in Los Angeles where everybody's got a ridiculous idea?
And especially the fact that the Schmoedown sounds like a strange dance.
And then you call it the Schmoedown. You're like, this isn't even, like, did you just come up with this idea on the drive here? Like, is this even
in a trash can? Yeah, let's call it the Schmoedown. Come on, call it the Schmoedown. No, look, it all just evolved, and I wanted to stay true to what it was. The short story of it is that what we wanted to do, and you're exactly right. We started out. I started out in comedy and working in film development, working over at Warner Brothers, and I worked at a production company for Joe Silver for a while. And through all of that, I was doing stand-up at the Comedy Store, and I was a regular at the Comedy Store. That's where, you know, I've met a lot of our mutual friends together. But I also met Mark Ellis there, and Mark Ellis and I became really good friends. And I shot this pilot. He shot it with me, and then we started doing movie reviews together. We created the Schmoedown brand. Our podcast, kind of in the years that we were doing it together, we started doing our podcast. And in 2014, as you were mentioning, you know, Kevin Undergaro and Maria Menounos, and were very gracious and let us build our platform in their studio. And they had that. I don't know if you were ever at the old house where it was just like, it was the house itself, not it would
like the original Afterbuzz house where it was literally the house was just studios.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember the first time I went there, and they gave me the address, and like I pulled up. I think I was with my wife or whoever. I was like, just stay in the car and leave it running, because this is just a house in a neighborhood. Like, I don't know what I'm walking into.
You walk in, there's just a clown with underwear on. And it's like, no. When it was great. It was like a clubhouse.
Yeah, amazing.
It was great, and we wanted to do like the Howard Stern show for movies. It's something we always wanted to do, because nobody was in 2014. There wasn't a lot of that long form content, you know. So we were doing that, and we built out through our crew and the people that we had. And the last half an hour of the show in 2014, Ellis and I said, let's do like a March Madness, like 15-week tournament, and just put everybody up from the crew against each other and see who would be the last person standing. And Katie Sackhoff was the first match versus Ken Knapsack, and that went over really well. We did it again the following year with teams. And when I started working over at Collider, they were looking for content. And I had Mark and I had like this development deal over there where we were on Movie Talk at the time and Jedi Council and these other things. But like, there was just like a set deal that we had. I wasn't an employee there yet. So I had approached John Campy at the time, and I said, listen, I had an idea of what I'd like to do with the Schmoedown. Right now it's yearly, but what if we made it weekly? And what if we went after like people from Nerdist and IGN and Rotten Tomatoes, but we treated it like the UFC, where we would do like press conferences, and we'll do like contract signings, and we'll do like this big thing. We'll turn it into a league. And he was on board for it. And he said, well, you know, let me set you up a Complex, who owned Collider at the time. And we had the conversation with it, and they didn't want to put the money into it. So what they said to me was, look, you have your deal that we pay you. If you take some of that money that we pay you and you pay for the show, you can have the IP. I said, deal. Done.
Okay. Yeah.
Done.
Yeah. Which is
So,
really smart. And that's like, you know, that's one of those moves that I think maybe a younger person might not quite understand, but like somebody like you who's a self-starter and going through stand-up and knowing professional wrestling and all that stuff,
yeah.
where really these guys, you're always your own kind of business, right? You're an entrepreneur. Like so you know that the brand value is going to be as valuable as the work that you put into it.
Right.
So if you get to retain that value after all is said and done, that can be worth way more than any money that they're going to give you if you do it right.
You do it right. But the thing was, it was exactly what you said, is because they said, wait, they trusted me, to be fair, and they trusted me because I was hosting these shows and like, you know, and with the schmoes, I brought in an audience. So like, okay, well, we'll put it on the air, but like, we're just not going to pay for it. So pay for it out of your thing. And, you know, that's fine. It's like, well, the Schmoedown, what is this thing? And it'll be on the air for like a month and then we don't have to worry about it. So we started doing it and it started to become very popular. And we led with Dan Merle versus John Campea. It's like our first big match. And I think that match now has like something like 200,000 or 300,000 views or whatever it did. And it did really well. It brought it because for the audience that was like, wait, what is this? Oh, wait, it's like an actual like competitive. Oh, they're treating movie trivia like if it's like a fight. This is interesting. And then we started doing it weekly and then it started getting a lot of views. And then Complex came back and they said, well, what if we pay for one of them and we get to keep like, you know, not, they can't keep the IP, but they can keep like the, you know, these matches, and they would get sponsorship and retain sponsorships for as long as the show was on the air. And I said, deal, let's start a teams division. So we started the teams division and we ran 2 a week. So that started for a while and we ran the league for a while. And then Mark Fernandez, who bought the company, was about as supportive as you could get with the Schmoedown. And he was super, and he's a friend of mine, and he was really awesome about it. But at one point when he was putting his own money into it, he's like, it went back to, he's like, I can't pay for the Schmoedown anymore. He's like, for the team stuff, like, I just can't do it because I'm focused on other stuff. I said, look, I'm going to start a Patreon. I'll keep it on Collider, and I'll run the Patreon like a streaming service, and I'll offer certain things, but I need to be able to tape the matches maybe on the weekends. So we did that. And at the time I was the director of VP of programming and development over there. So there was just a lot that I was able to build. I was very fortunate that Collider helped me build it, and they were very supportive over it, everybody over there. And then once I was able to build the name and start doing live events, that's when it all changed and got more eyes on it. And I took a lot of meetings, and the meeting that I really responded to is I met with Skybound, who created The Walking Dead, Kirkman and Dave Alpert, and I met with Dave Alpert, and we sat down, and when I left that meeting, because I had met him years ago when I was working at Warner Brothers, and I just said, he's like a good dude who kind of gets it, another New York dude who he seemed real. Didn't seem like that kind. He didn't have that Hollywood thing.
Yeah.
So when we were talking, we had talked once before, and we'd vibed on it. Just didn't work out the way we thought it was going to. But then the day that I kind of got canned from Collider, when I was told it was going to be my last month, if you will, I shouldn't say canned, but when we agreed that I wasn't going to be there, that day I took a meeting with Skybound again, and it was the same day. And I was like, and in my head, you know, you just have that, you just feel like, oh wait, okay, this one's going to work. This is going to happen. Right. And it did. And Skybound, we partnered up, and they gave me a VP of production title over there to just work on Schmoedown. And so I just do Schmoedown with them, and we're doing live events, we're doing sponsorships, we're doing, all these different studio matches. And then COVID happened, and then I'm working with them. They're fantastic, man. I can't say enough great words. It was the right deal. I got nervous at first partnering up with anybody because I'm like, oh, they're going to get too involved. They're going to tell me how to run my show. Are they going to tell me this?
When it's your thing, it's always real. Like, the best thing that you could do is get a whole bunch of money for your thing that you created. That's just this idea that you had, but that's also the worst thing that you could do, because now you have to share your idea and you have to share your vision, and it's not just your thing anymore. It's not, it's out of your toy box now.
In certain ways, that's very true with them, right? Like, there's certain like business things that I was able to do before that I can't do now because it's because I have a partnership with somebody, which I'm not like, oh, I wish I didn't do that. I was like, I get it. These are very smart people over there who are making certain moves and have certain connections and can get the thing seen by people that I'm like, okay, that's cool. I can't make that decision, but these people can, and I'm happy with that. It was always the creative part of it. Like when creative things come in, I get emails. What do you think about this? And if I say, it doesn't really work for the brand, they go, okay, well, let's do something else. And they've not once since I've been there, and I've been there almost a year now, have I ever gone, we need you to do this. You have to change this. We don't want this person to do this. We don't want this to do that. It was a promise that they made me in the room, and they've stuck to that promise. And I'm very happy with the decision I made.
You know, I think about it in terms of radio sometimes, and it's kind of amazing that even if the agreement with Collider or whatever was, this is going to be your last month, to get a 30-day heads up and to still be able to go on the air, it's like kind of amazing and pretty unheard of, because I'm assuming you spent that 30 days figuring out what your next move was and then telling your audience. 100%.
Yeah,
and I mean, that's nuts.
But it was, again, and I give the credit to Mark Fernandez, who was a friend of mine. Like, right. We sat down, we had the conversation, and because what we were supposed to do, what I thought was going to happen, I didn't think I would be there past December. Yeah, I thought that once December came, we were going to sit down, we're going to have a conversation about what I think, what I needed, what he wanted, and we probably wouldn't agree, and then I would move on. That's what I thought was going to happen. So when I walked into the room, he's like, I think I got to let you go. I think we got to end it. And I'm like, I got to be honest with you, and I've said this, my first thought was, I don't have to drive to Burbank anymore. That's my first thought, because I hated that drive. But I then, he and I laughed and we goofed about, and I said, well, and the reason why, to be honest, and this is why he's a really good friend, he gave me that extra month because for health insurance. And he gave it for my family, that I could have that extra month because if my last day was on November 1st, then I would get that health insurance for that month. And and so he did that. I'm telling you, he was a really good dude. And then, he said to me, he's like, as long as I don't want anything public said. This is a very cordial conversation that we're having, and we're both agreeing. And like I just want, when you're on Collider Live for the remainder of the month, just be, and I didn't really promote because we're starting SEN Live. So I would mention it, but I wasn't like being a scumbag about it, to where I'd be like, hey guys, don't worry about this anymore. I'm doing SEN Live. Don't follow this show. I was that Roxy took over after I left, and and Roxy's one of my favorite people in the world. And I wanted to make sure that both Roxy and Dorina were supported over there. So it was unheard of because of the way that everybody kind of was cool with each other. Cause the dude that was running, Thad Williams, who's a guy, he was running Schmoedown for me at the same time. So I was very happy with how it all went down, because I have no ill will towards anybody over there. It was a great time.
Did you kind of know somewhere in your head as you were leaving Collider, did you see the signs like, you know what, this might be a good time to get out because this isn't going to exist? Because really, I mean, only a couple months after you were gone, the whole site ceases to exist in its current form, and everybody that was doing shows was just like, hey, yesterday was your last day.
Well, not the site though. The site itself, Collider.com, is thriving. Collider.com is crushing. Like that the website itself is the bread and butter of that place in general. Like Frosty and Steve Weintraub over there does an amazing job with everything that he's doing, and his team. He's got a great team over there. But the video side of it, that was, again, Fernandez deciding after, whether it was after I left or whatever it might be, or maybe it was leading to that, decided that video just wasn't, it's what we were just talking about 10 minutes ago. It's a business decision. He looks around and he's like, just, and to be honest, I just wasn't vibing. It didn't matter if it was Collider or whatever it was. I just thought that the panel show, is talking about movie news, and everybody treating movie news like, and not just Collider, this is in general, the space, like it's world news. Like it's like they're going on, CNN and or whatever, and going on and saying, okay, I gotta break this and take it so serious. I was like, I can't. Like when I was doing it, when I had the most fun is when John Schnepp was on there, and Ellis and Jeremy Johns and Ashley Mova, Sinead, and Campia, and like when we were doing that stuff, that to me was the most fun. It became too serious for me, and. Right. And, and then there was a lot of stuff. And I did enjoy the interviews. The interviews that we were getting for Collider Live were great. And that's my favorite thing, is just talking to people.
That is funny, though, when you're doing like entertainment news and you're like, the best part about just doing movie stuff is you don't have to get into the toxic world that is kind of becoming everything, right? You don't have to get into news or politics or even sports or anything. And then when entertainment starts to get taken as seriously as regular news, you're like, this is what I was trying to avoid.
Yeah, 100%. That's why when I transferred into SEN Live was that we talk about movie news, but we goof around like the same way that you and I would probably talk about it off air. You know, that's how I want to do it. I don't want to put, oh, we're breaking news, we're doing that, we're taking this so serious. Like, oh, it's like there's too much serious crap out there that I'm like, nah, we want to goof around about it. And we spend a little bit of time on it on our show now, and then we just kind of just play around. And that's what, so as far as writing on the wall or anything, no, I mean, I think that he did what he needed to do. And I think that he wanted to, he's focusing in on his website. They definitely used the video to promote other stuff. But like, if you can't support that business model, he was employing a lot of people. And that's the other thing. People don't give him enough credit for what he did. Complex was going to cut everybody, dude. Complex was going to cut everybody when they were, and like he bought it like 2 years before he shut it down, the video side of it. They were going to get rid of it and just, and keep like one or two people. Everybody was toast. And he bought it with his own money. He bought it over and saved a lot of jobs, and he got slammed when all the video stuff happened because, you know, when you have all these beloved people that people are following, like, oh, how do you not support these people? He gave those people jobs for 2 years.
Dude, I had no idea. Like, and that's why I love the internet so much. And it was one of the things that it was like, it was a light bulb moment for me for sure, because I always knew what niche culture had done. Obviously I know the wrestling podcast world and I know what the internet has done for niche culture and how you don't need to be this mainstream thing. But like, I had no idea. Like, I was aware of Collider, and I would watch you and Roxy sometimes, and just if a video popped up, be like, oh, what are those guys up to? But when the thing went down and like every host did a live stream and like they all had 100,000 people watching, I was like, people loved this thing. People are upset about this thing. Yeah, it was wild to me. And it also was like, and I think that that's part of this, the whole Schmoedown thing, is that you're able to build these cultures.
Yeah.
And it becomes like all you need is that community. You get enough people in a community. It doesn't need to be this sort of CNN one-stop name for everything. It's like, no, there's a ton of people.
It's fun. You want to have fun. Like we can be
fun with us.
Yeah, having fun. Like that's why the Schmoedown it's definitely, look, it gets competitive, and I'm not going to tell you that it's all sunshine and rainbows. People are screaming at each other, yelling at each other behind the scenes. People's threatening to walk off like this and that. It happens like anything else, but and the community is incredible. The community that the Schmoedown community is one of the best communities ever. Like, they get they're like wrestling fans. You know, they're very critical on who they like and who's getting pushed and who's that, and they're very critical that way. But they're very passionate. There's all these different after shows now. Like this one show, they just started this show. It's called the 5-Pointer, which is based off of the 5-Point is the last thing if you hit it in our game, and it is essentially it's the same format as like Pardon the Interruption, and it's a half an hour, and they go down all the top stories and all the matches and everything. And I've been obsessed with it because I'm like, this is the kind of sports show that I want, and I love it. Like that's the type of stuff that the community has built out. And that because after all that Collider stuff, you can see all those people on my show. Like they're all there. Like John Roca is the team's champion right now. Dan Merle, who left Screen Junkies, you know, he's our current champion right now and team's champion. Roxy is a manager in the league. Like there's Mark Riley is a competitor. There's all these people that were part of Collider that are still part of our show.
When did you realize that part of growing the audience, right? When you start getting eyes and the eyes start to grow and the ears start to grow, that you also end up, there's the negative side of that, right? Like you just said, there's the critical side of it, or there's the side of the people who were like, you know, this used to be cool, but now it sucks. Like for instance, like I was just kind of going through Kristian Harloff, you know, YouTube videos or whatever, going down the wormhole and I found this video of you arguing with one of your producers on the Collider show or whatever, right? And I'm sitting there as a radio person watching this going like,
infamous.
I mean, yeah, that's what struck me. Like as a radio guy, I'm watching this going like, I mean, we would have these fights every single day. Like, I mean, this is nothing. Like, this is just like, they're bickering. Like, that's what happens on a show. But that's when the community thing, I really started to think about it because I start seeing these analysis videos and people that did videos about the video. And this is the thing. And I'm like, this is amazing. Do you like that? do you like that? Like, because to you, I'm assuming it was just a office thing and it went away, and now you're seeing it just explode. Or do you not particularly like all that drama?
No,
around you?
It was a weird soup. Because the first part, the complete honest thing is that I had a tremendously bad 2 or 3 weeks leading up to that. My brother had passed away the year before. Mm-hmm. His birthday was in May. So during that time, you know, I'm not going to make any mistakes about saying anything that I was angry. I was
just in a bad place. Yeah.
Bad place. Had fits, did things inside of my head and went into work. And I was just on Heidi and Frank, which is a great show here in Los Angeles on KLOS, and I've been doing that show for like 6 years, and I was in a mood. And Frank had asked me on the air. He's asked me about this stupid freaking Galaxy's Edge park, right? The Star Wars I've been doing forever. And I'm like, and on the air, I'm like, F that park. And it became this really funny bit that we were doing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go to Collider Live. I'm going to carry that over. I'm going to do the same thing. And if they ask about it, I'm going to go right into it.
You know, I was sensing that, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but I was sensing that. I was sensing that you're going like
for a bit.
I sense that your frustration was, why won't this room just let me trash this thing? Because it's funny to trash a theme park that everybody loves.
That's that and the fact that but what you were saying though, the thing that didn't go over well at all is because when you're trying and people are trying to have the conversation with you, you go over words and everything. And at one point I go, you know, because I'm talking about my show, Jedi Council was on the air for at that point 5 years. So in my head, what the statement was supposed to be was that, you know, I've been busting my ass 5 years, pushing this show, doing this thing. And what was said was I've been busting my ass as a Star Wars fan for 5 years. Is what so, dude, and the internet, they get you. There's this one dude who just doesn't like me at all. And he posted it up and it got like 400,000 views or something. And I'm like, oh my God, that was it. Plus, and then because that was the thing. And the thing that I regretted the most about the whole situation, because like Haley Fouch and Christina Radish are two amazing writers on Collider. As I was going through and talking about this thing, I said, why are they getting sent this? And I shouldn't even mention their names. They're phenomenal writers and they should have been sent for Collider. I was just saying, because inside of this thing, I wanted to go to this stupid thing. They didn't invite me to it or whatever. And I realized in the gist of it, it sounds ridiculous. It sounds like, who gives a crap if you go to the thing? So the next week I came on, I said, look, sorry about this whole stupid thing. And I never once, honestly, I think I never have ever talked about the fact that my brother or anything was in my head, because I didn't want it to come out as like an excuse.
Yeah.
At all.
I'm sorry. You know, I was upset that my brother died. It made me mad about being a Star Wars fan. Like, you could really easily make it worse. Yeah.
And I was made it so much worse. So I just took the hits, and people said, dude, I was on Bert's show. I was on Bert's show recently, and I saw in the comments, and he's like, "Oh, so you worried about not going to Star Wars for it?" I'm like, and I think I wrote back like, fresh joke. You know, it's just like it's like I get it, and like it's the one thing that's going to carry you around. That it's going to carry me around in this space. If that's it, all right, then that's it. That's fine.
And I kind of think it's funny anyway. Like, I mean, and the other thing too is that when you grow up like with wrestling and being a wrestling fan, I don't know. I feel like there's ways of communicating that wrestling fans kind of just inherently understand that normies don't quite get. Like the whole, my theory is that real wrestling fans understand not only the idea of wrestling being fake, but everything being fake.
Yes.
Way more.
Because arguments. Well, that was the Stern side of it, right?
I would never watch a clip of you being mad at something on the air. And then necessarily, like if I talked to you in person and you were like, I wouldn't bring up Galaxy's Edge because I'm like, that's a thing that he did on the show. Like I'm not gonna, that's not real life. That's a thing on the show. Because
the thing with the producer stuff, like because that was he was running my Schmoedown stuff. I right after that was over. And I'm talking about 3 minutes after we went off the air, we high-fived each other in the hallway and said that was awesome. We didn't know that the busting your ass for 5 years thing and all that stuff was going to come up, and that it was going to become this thing because it became a thing. Yeah. And I was like, it didn't work because there was other thing. There was stuff that I thought was really good radio And then there was stuff that I said that shouldn't have been said, definitely shouldn't have done that. I feel bad that I said that. And I was like, now it just was messy. And it was a thing that it became a thing. And for a while, the thing that would bum me out is when certain Star Wars personalities were like retweet or talking about it and like, look at this privileged a-hole. I'm like, oh no, like Gary Whitta, who I love Gary Whitta. He's such a great dude, and he's so talented. And he had responded to it like, look at this prick, and I'm like, oh, that sucks, but it is what it is.
You know what I also loved? Like, I popped because I hadn't even seen this thing, right? And I popped so hard because we talk about all the connections, the Venn diagram similarities that we have. I've known Jermaine from Slash Films forever. Like, he's a radio fan. So I've known him for probably 15 years, through communications or whatever. And so when you're like, oh, Jermaine can go to everything, I'm like, yeah. Well,
Jermaine. I saw Jermaine. Jermaine, again, another New York guy. I love Jermaine. I saw him at Comic-Con like a couple, and this is why I love Jermaine even more, because I saw him and I'm like, he was the one guy I hadn't seen. I ran into him, like, oh, I gotta go up. I gotta tell this guy I feel bad for what happened. And I walk up to him and I was like, dude, and he's like, just don't worry about it. It's funny. And I go, he didn't care.
Dude, he's a radio fan.
Yeah,
he's a radio fan. He understands.
He got it. No, I was that one when I talked to Jermaine at Comic-Con, I was like, all right, I always knew that he's cool, but he was a champ about it. It was cool.
Just so funny.
Stupid.
So funny. So speaking of wrestling, it's so, there's so many people who have that former writer credit on the resume just because of how quick the turnover is. But I do feel like most of the people you talk to have like between 2007 and 2013. There's not that many people that you come into contact with that have that golden age, early 2000s. You know what I mean? Like really Attitude Era is still going on. Maybe you could argue it's just starting to peter out, but
I was Attitude Era for sure, dude. I was there when Kurt Angle Milk Truck.
You were there for that.
That was my first day.
Oh my God.
That was my first day at a live event, but that was my first day, the first event. Yeah.
To me, that stuff is even more special because to me, like, there was still, websites and newsletters and stuff like that, but they weren't filming everything. There wasn't a documentary about everything. Like when you find little clips of behind the scenes stuff from that era, whether it's like, B-roll from Beyond the Mat or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, Vince Russo talking to Dude Love about how to strut or something. You go, oh my God, like I'll watch it 150 times just to kind of feel like, I wonder what it felt like back then. The last time the WWE did a pay-per-view at the Rosemont Horizon or whatever it's called now.
Yeah.
They haven't touched that building in 30 years. It's the same. It's always been. And I'm walking around backstage and I'm like, but just imagine what this was like in like 99, in 2000, in 2001, like incredible. So you showed up your first day. So were you just working in Connecticut or were you on the road?
So, I mean, I'll give a shortened version. I don't know if you've heard the story about it, but like how I got the gig, but like it was my buddy's girlfriend was working in the like accounting side of stuff in Stamford. Right. And I had gone to college with her and she said, listen, why don't you and Jay, who was her boyfriend at the time, come to WrestleMania 17. So we drove from LA. It was great.
If there's any WrestleMania to go to,
that would
be the one.
And we drove from LA to Houston to go to WrestleMania 17. We had like the whole hotel and everything was kind of taken care of and all that. And at the time, I'm what, 20, 21, something like that, 21. And I get there and I'm at the hotel and I go downstairs and at the bar are all the wrestlers and off to the side is Paul Heyman. So I walk up to Paul and I said to him, I go, how do you, I said, Paul, Mr. Heyman, I know a lot of people ask you questions about how to become a wrestler, but how do you become a writer? Because remember at the time, like you were saying, the writing thing for WWE was new. It was,
and there certainly weren't like 150 podcasts with ex-WWE writers like explaining the entire story. Like nobody really, this concept of there are writers.
No, there was
really
WrestleZone. WrestleZone was the thing that like
Right.
that's how you would get your breaking news. That was it. There was none of these other big stories out there or sites out there. So I went up to him and I asked him how you become a writer. He goes, write a letter. I said, I did that already. He goes, write another one. I said, all right. So I went back, and this is before like even the mass emails, you know. So I'm going and I wrote up. My buddy Andrew Freed helped me write up this letter. And Andrew Freed, he just directed this the movie about Freestyle Love Supreme with Lin-Manuel Miranda, and it was about his whole the whole thing, how they all started out, and how that went from being going on to Broadway and turning into Hamilton. And he had filmed them in 2005, right? Wow. Before they blew up, and like it was stayed on their couch in Scotland and had all this footage and sat on it forever. Then he went on to like produce Chef's Table and Last Chance U. And he's like a massive producer over at like Netflix and stuff too. He owns Boardwalk Pictures. And so he's a very established dude. And he, at the time, this is before, it's like 2001. He helps me write this letter to Vince McMahon. And I write this whole big letter to Vince. And then I wrote to everybody else on the team. And I send out to everybody, Stephanie, whoever's on there, I just sent out the letters. Kept sending in letters over and over again. It was like Shawshank Redemption, where at the one point they just stop sending letters, just submit storylines, and if we like them, we'll bring you in. So I did this whole thing. At the time, it was the WCW who had just been acquired. Right. So I had done before it happened, and I'm not saying that they took it because it was very different. And even if they did, they could have. They hired me, but it was the invasion angle, right. And I wanted to do this, and to show you, they definitely didn't do it. Buff Bagwell was in the center of my feet. So, but I had like,
what's your level of anxiety like? Because I feel like, knowing me,
yeah,
if I'm doing that right, and I write the Buff Bagwell piece and everything, and then I find out that after one match Buff Bagwell was fired. Like, I'd be a mess. I'd be like, oh, they're going to hate my ideas. They think I like.
But he didn't get fired. I don't think he was even there when I don't think he just came. Okay. I think he came in like 2002. I think like when I wrote this, it was like to early 2001 when I wrote this. And, I put Jericho front and center, and I had The Rock obviously front and center for a lot of the stuff that I was doing. So after I did that, and I wrote these storylines and I wrote these big angles, I got a message or an email that said, Stephanie really likes your pieces and what you did. They want to bring you in for a meeting in Stamford. So they flew me in, and I read this whole article and stuff that with Triple H and interviews. He was injured at the time. He wasn't around.
Right.
And yeah, he was out, his leg or something. Yeah,
that was the torn quad, right?
Yeah.
And that was like the biggest babyface return.
In that ever. I was gone at that point when he came out. I'll get into that before this is over, I'm sure. But anyway, so I get there. And at the table was, I'm trying to remember everybody, but it was definitely Stephanie, Paul Heyman, Pritchard, Brian Jerwitz for sure, and Ed. Shoot. Can't remember his last name. Sorry. Anyway, so they're interviewing me, and it definitely felt like, I mean, you know how they go to intimidate you up top because they want to see if you can hang. Mm-hmm. And they were doing that, and they're having this whole thing, and they're just kind of coming after me and to see if I know what I'm talking about. And I was a massive wrestling fan for years, and so they were quizzing me on stuff, and I was hitting it, and I was doing everything. I was telling them storylines, and then Paul Heyman says to me, he goes, "Let me ask you a question. If you didn't get this job right now, and we told you didn't get it, and we'd ask you to leave, what would you do?" I said, "Well, I'd go home. I'd figure out another way, write you another letter in about a couple of weeks and say, what do I need to do next to get the gig?" And he goes, "All right, come here." So he pulls me in and he goes, "Sit down. I got a feeling about you." And he has me call a match with
commentary.
Yeah. Has me call a match. Okay. And he goes, and he tells whoever's in the back, he goes, "Fire up a match." And he goes, "I want you to do color for this match." And I ate it bad. I mean, it was like, I know because it's what I do now, that if I had the same, 20 years later, if I had the same, that I probably would have done a lot better than I did at the time, but I ate it. But he goes, "You got the gig." And the reason you got the gig is the answer that you gave me at the end. Stephanie agreed on it, and they hired me, and I was there for like a month and a half. You saw they recycle the LA writers, like,
yeah,
because it's cheaper to do it.
So what, after a month and a half, was it like, what was the precipice in a month and a half for you to be like, for you to not be there anymore? Were they like, okay, we've we've milked we've juiced every last drop out of this one.
No, I think that I also pulled a really, I've definitely talked about this before. There's 3 moments in my life that I go, if I could do it over, I definitely wouldn't do it that way. Okay. One of those moments was when, and I don't know if they still did this for now. I mean, you could tell me they still do it, but Vince used to do the big company meetings where before the events, he would talk to everyone. Does he still do those?
Very, very, very rarely. There's
did them all
something specific. Yeah.
For every event, did them all the time. It's my first day. Well, for the live events, I was there for Stanford for a little bit. So that's why I said I was there close to 2 months, because I was there for kind of getting ready before I went on the road. So I get there, and in my head, I'm going, okay, I want to show them that I'm excited and let people know who I am and show them that I got some good ideas. So he's in the middle of saying something. So if anybody has any ideas, I go, shoot my hand up. I say something. He goes, and then like goes on and says, all right. So then, I don't know, probably maybe 15, 20 minutes later, he says something, I go, hand up again. And I say something else.
And you're the new guy, by the way.
First day in the room.
Yeah.
In my head, I'm thinking if I make a move here, people are going to know, okay. But he just kind of shot it down. The only person that said anything to me that made me feel exactly like I was feeling after I did that, which was, I don't feel like that went well, was Coach. Coach goes, hey, nobody raises their hand once in the meeting when the first day. He goes, you did it twice. He goes, that's going to be tough to come back from. And I went, well, that's coach. But I respected it. But
yeah, that's one of the great things about WWE that they're so business and like moving. Yeah. If you do something wrong, you know it, and you know not to do it again.
I knew it right away. And again, like I said, I think I'm 22 years old at this point. So I'm like, I'm not, and I was a wrestling mark. I mean, when I first got to the hotel, I see Stone Cold and Deborah at the time. And I go up to them, and I'm like, hey, I'm a new writer, right? And he's like, oh, hey, and he was very cool. And then he realized, I could see in his head, he's like, oh, this guy's also like a real fan too. He's like, not that he's being crappy to the fans, but he's just like, okay, it's a different thing. And then and I had to reel that in. Like now today, I'm like, especially working in this business, I'd be able to, it's like you'd be able to do that, like no problem. It's part of the show. But when you're 22 years old and you're looking at these, oh, it's The Rock, it's this, it's that. Right. And I had to reel all that. My boss was Stephanie McMahon, and I'm looking up to Stephanie McMahon and she's telling me these things, that things. And I'm in my head, I'm going, I just watched you win the women's championship last year, and like.
I had a question, Stephanie. Remember when The Undertaker kidnapped you?
I became Chris Farley. In that scene. Remember that time when you and Tess got married, and then I was doing that whole thing. But anyway, but the one thing though is I wrote a lot, and they listened to me a lot, and they took a lot of my stuff. They used a lot of my stuff. They had me, and because of my comedy background, like I wrote the whole when they punished Saturn for beating the piss out of that guy, and then they gave him like the moppy, right? Yeah. And I had to do the milk carton monologue for him for when you remember he was on the
I love the moppy angle. So you don't have to,
Well, I wrote him bits for this all stuff, and he's sitting there doing it and reading out. I'm laughing my head off going, I can't, this is amazing. Right. And I was doing stuff. I had written stuff for DDP was awesome to me when I was there. And like I was working with him.
When that's not a good thing, it's a bad thing. Or that's not a bad thing, that's a good thing. Big smile, motivational speaker. DDP.
Yeah. He was doing that around that time. But the other one that I was doing was, the scene that I was doing that is still going around today was I was walking around and Shane McMahon grabs me and he goes, do you want to be on camera? And I was kidding with him. And I look at him. I go, do I get my SAG card out of it? Right. And I was 100% sure. He's like, no. And I go, I'm joking. And he's like, all right, that was funny. He's like, no, but you can do a scene with The Rock. And I was like, okay. So I did a scene with The Rock, and it's when he's looking for the APA, and he comes walking in, and it was great because I still hold this. I don't know, sorry about that. And I still hold this in my head where I'd never seen it because I was such a wrestling fan.
Yeah.
I had never seen The Rock really give a crap about any of the workers, right? So, or at least talk to him. And he walks up to me in the scene, and he goes, "Excuse me, do you know where the APA is?" And I go, "They're down the hall." And he's like, "All right." And he comes back. He goes, "You new here?" And this is all like improv. I'm like, "Yeah, my name is." He goes, And he gives me a hand. He goes, "The Rock." And he walks off, shakes my hand. I was like, okay, that was cool. Then you fast forward to, I guess, like a year and a half, 2 years later, I ran up to him. I saw him. He and I were at the same party, and we talked for a while about working together and everything too. And at the end of the night, we ran into each other again, and he goes, "Hey, dude, it was great seeing you again." I go, "You too." And he's like, "What was your name again?" I go, "It was Kristian." And he did it same thing. And I said, "You son of a bitch." But anyway,
by the way, that's great because the audience is sitting there going like, "He's going to do it. It doesn't matter what your name," and then he doesn't do it.
No,
like that's even better.
It was great. Like it meant a lot to me. It was a cool scene. But and it was funny because Shane gave me a lot of tough love when I was there, but he wasn't a douche to me. He gave me tough love, and he was basically, you could tell that if I had been there long enough, I would have. I think that he would have, because Paul Heyman took me under his wing. Paul Heyman was awesome to me, and I actually recently we started following each other on Twitter, and I thanked him for the time. He was the one guy. There were a couple of people there that not so nice and couldn't give a crap, and one of them said to me, he's like, "You won't be here in a week," and I wasn't. And again, honesty, but it was kind of a dick move. But either way, like, it was working. It was like working at a traveling circus, man. And then when I got back, I didn't watch wrestling again for 15 years.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't watch it for 15 years. I didn't only start watching it again because of the Schmoedown.
Isn't it funny though that like you're there for a month and a half and you have a year worth of stories? Like that's how much things are just happening all the time. You're like, we can do another 2 hours talking about my, 45 days.
Yeah, well, SmackDown was on Tuesdays, dude. It was Monday and Tuesdays.
Yeah.
So we would travel like back and forth. So I was doing a lot of different shows. I did house shows. I talked to this whole, because X-Pac was on Collider Live not too long ago, and we were telling stories about like how he and I we drove to his house show together with him and Steven Regal, and it was all this. It was nuts. Like there was so much stuff, so many stories that I had when I was there, and I was there for a very short period of time. But I also knew I was sitting in the back in one of the pools next to JR talking, and like I remember I stayed out too long. I got this really massive sunburn, and I was like, and I walk in, and I was like super red. I'm like, this is just embarrassing. It was everything. And then at one point, the first night I met Booker T, who I now work with. So I think it was in Chicago, and we're at this bar, and I'm sitting down, and I go to this table, and it's Booker T, Arn Anderson, I can't remember who else, a couple other people, and I sit down, and I go to sit down, and I say to Booker, can I sit here? And he goes, no. And I think he's messing with me, right? So I go, all right, I sit down, and he gets up like this, and he goes, I said no. And I'm like, whoa. And Arn goes, no, Booker, that's New Boy. That's a writer. It's New Boy. And Booker's like, oh man, I'm just kidding with you. And I was like, holy, I just like dropped the load in my pants. And then a shot goes sliding across the table to me and goes, here, welcome to the team. Congratulations on getting the gig. And it was Benoit. And he's got the neck brace on. And I had like 2 interactions with him. Again, I didn't work with him at all enough to say anything about the man's character, but from the day that I met him, couldn't have been a nicer dude to me that day.
Did you ever meet Patrice O'Neal in your comedy travel? I mean, he was New York and you were LA.
Yeah,
so
yeah. No, I didn't.
He was a writer at WWE for I think 3 days.
Oh, 3 days?
And he said that Stephanie had to fire him 4 times in a row. Because they were on the plane, and she was like, Patrice, he said that he had written this entire treatment about the Big Boss Man, and that's what had gotten him the gig. Because Patrice was like a huge wrestling fan, the biggest. And she said that like he realized that Patrice doesn't do well with authority. He never did, and so the idea that in WWE, if you're a writer, it's like you're a staff member. Like you're at the beck and call. That's what the job is.
Yep.
And I think Patrice realized that really, really quickly because they were on a plane ride and they were like, all right, Patrice, we're going to need you this weekend to go to this meeting. Patrice was like, I can't. I got stand up. And they're like, okay, well, we really need you at this meeting. And he's like, well, I got stand up. And they were like, well, if you're not at this meeting, we're going to have to let you go. And he's like, well, okay. They're like, so we're going to have to let you go. He's like, okay. They're like, so we're letting you go. He's like, all right. Like, he's just like, no, I'm going to the stand-up gig this weekend.
Best story ever. Oh, dude. Yeah. And you know who else was? Freddie Prinze Jr.
Oh, yeah. I've talked to him a lot about his time and how he had to kind of get past. Like, there was a lot of people that thought he was just, you know, Hollywood actor boy that had gotten pushed through. He's the man.
In.
I love him.
Freddie's awesome. Yeah.
But yeah, he's got a ton of great stories because he started an acting class. He started a promo class for a lot of the guys. So do you still do stand up?
So I did it for the first. So it was my life. You know, I became a regular at the Comedy Store in like 2002, and that's where I was for a long time. It's all I did. And then and I think that once I started doing schmoes and everything else, I stopped in like 2010, right? And for the first time in I think like 10 years or 9 years, I got up on stage in New York in last year, and it was great. It's like, you know, it is definitely like it's a drug. I mean, there's no doubt about it. It's like, and when I would go to the Comedy Store, I was at the Comedy Store when Mitzi died, and I was there for like, you know, they had like it was essentially a reunion for all of the Comedy Store regulars to pay honor and tribute to her. And it's like being in the old Rocky gym. It's like when you're there, it's like you just, as if you're a fighter, you're a fighter, you know. And I remember being there and looking at the OR stage and going, oh my God, I want to jump up on that stage so bad. OR is my favorite room of all time.
Was there a specific moment when you were like, because I mean, you did stand up for years, and that's kind of what you were working towards, and then life took a whole bunch of turns, and you end up, you know, in the same sort of space but doing something different. Was there a moment when you were like, okay, I'm going to give up stand-up and just focus on this? Or did you just kind of realize one day, oh, it's been like a month since I got on stage. I think I'm doing this. I don't think I'm doing stand-up anymore.
I think that it was kind of a transition. There was one time that in 2004 because when I got back from the WWE actually is when I went like head first right back into stand-up, because I was doing stand-up for a while before I left. I went head first back into it. And that's when I just didn't stop and became a regular at the store and lived there. And then in 2004, I got myself involved in this relationship, and I was just kind of sitting around, not doing stuff. And it was the 1 year of my life that I I consider myself a very motivated person. And it was the 1 year that I wasn't that motivated, and I was like interning at like Village Roadshow, and just because the girl I was with was like, are you going to get a real job instead of just doing stand-up? You know, like, and I was like, I guess I'll start working in film somehow. So I did an internship, and I stopped doing stand-up as much. And I took that year off, and I was miserable. It was like, I knew that I missed it. And then when we broke up, dove back into it again. I was doing stand-up more than I ever was. I was doing colleges, and like Retta, who it was a friend of mine, had hooked me up with a college agent, and I was doing colleges, and I was like, this is it. But then, yeah, this online thing kind of happened, and this idea that I could still entertain people, and I can entertain people in masses and talk, because I've always wanted to do kind of what we're doing here today. That was to me what I always wanted to do, but I just never had an in radio. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to do it. And to be able to do like podcasting and I promoted fights, like illegal boxing matches in both college and at Iona, by the way. At Iona for the first year that I was there. And then when I was at Florida State, I did these boxing matches, and I always liked that structure. And then combining that with wrestling, that when I fell into the movie review stuff and all that, I realized that when I put out a movie review for whatever it was, and it got like, and I was telling jokes inside of it with Mark, it was doing 30 to 50 to 60,000 views. And I'm like, I'm performing in front of a lot of people right now. Right. And then with the Schmoedown, when we're going 500, 600, 1,000 people putting on these matches, I'm still performing. So even though I miss crafting my jokes and the freedom of just me being, because that was the thing I liked. I tried doing the acting thing, and I hate auditioning, and I hate all that crap. And even with hosting, going out and reading like the game show reads, I hate that stuff. But like when you're on stage and it's your stuff, and if you fail, it's because what you wrote wasn't good. That to me was the thing I always loved. Yeah. So I do miss that part of it, but I also, because of the Schmoedown, I think and Schmoes, I think it's kind of filled that void.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would imagine, especially with the live shows.
Yeah.
Like I would think that fills that void a lot. So the Schmoedown is happening. Kevin Smith and Chris Jericho. I mean, that's
Nuts.
an insane lineup. Is Jericho? Is he I mean, I know Kevin Smith is a huge movie buff, and I know that Jericho is a pop culture buff. Is he as big a movie buff as you guys are used to with the Schmoes?
He's a wild card, but the thing with Jericho, as you know, and as anybody who's a wrestling fan knows, is that you can't count him out of anything because he makes it happen. Like he's like, I'm going to be a rock star. He's a rock star. I'm going to be the champion of this federation. I'm the champion here. I'm a champion here, and he's able to do it because he's so damn entertaining and he's so smart. And he came on Collider Live. And it was funny because at that point, all these celebrities were coming in. I had them take pictures with the Schmoedown belt, and we would talk about it. And when Jericho came in, I said, I'm not going to bother him with the Schmoedown today. I'm not even going to bring it up. I just want to talk to him about him. I'm going to leave him alone. At the end of the interview, he goes, you didn't even ask me about Schmoedown. And he's like, you didn't even bring up Schmoedown. He's like, when are you going to let me do Schmoedown? And I'm like, dude, you're in. And I was like, who would you want to play? He goes, I want to play Kevin Smith. And this is like a year and a half ago, whatever it is, right?
Uh-huh.
And so Kevin Smith has been he and I had talked about, I had interviewed him at Sundance years ago, and he was supposed to do like Jedi Council, and we'd kind of danced around in circles about it. And he's like, I want to play in the Schmoedown. Because of this thing that we were doing with free agency, is that Coy Jandreau, who is the manager of a faction that we have called the Corky Mercs, and Roxy Stryer, who manages the Rockstars. Roxy had this relationship with Jericho because her and I had interviewed him, and then Coy had this relationship with Kevin because he had interviewed him for the show on Collider, Comic Book Shop. So they both called me during the free agency period. We're doing this big special. We're going to announce all the free agents, and it crushed, and we did it. And they both say to me, Coy goes, I got Smith. And I go, get out of here. And within seconds, Roxy texts me. She's like, I got Jericho. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm like, all right. I'm like, wait, to play in the league or just like a one-off? Like, no, they want to play in the league. And I'm like, this is great. I'm like, all right. And they both did videos. They both cut videos for it. We announced it. It blew up. And then I said, well, let's see if we can get them to play each other. And they're like, yeah, let's do it. So they're going to play each other. And it's like, and it's the 3-round structure.
And it's nice too that they have a relationship with each other.
Yes.
Like that they know each other, that Jericho has been in a bunch of Kevin Smith's movies, and they've known each other for a while.
They do a podcast together talking about movies.
Right.
And so I think that Jericho, I think what he's going to do, the thing that I'm curious with him is I think deep cut stuff he's going to be good at. It's the general knowledge stuff that I wonder, because the only thing, so one of our guys, Brad Gilmore, who's the guy who introduced me to
I know Brad. Yeah.
Brad's awesome. Brad calls matches for us. He hosts a show for us called the Schmoedown Rundown, which is essentially like our sports center on Saturdays, right? So Brad was on Jericho's show promoting his Back to the Future book that he's written. So at one point, Jericho says to him, who directed Back to the Future? Was that Spielberg? And I was like, because it's Zemeckis.
Yeah, of course it's Zemeckis.
But it could have been a brain fart at that point, because then he pulled out some random horror like tidbit that I don't know, that nobody knows, and there was this thing about the actor who played Porkins in Star Wars. He knows deep cut stuff,
right?
So I don't know how it's going to go. And Kevin Smith, to his admission, smokes a lot of weed, so maybe his recall goes off. I don't know.
But Kevin Smith only started smoking weed within the last, 5 years or however long it's been. So does that memory from before the weed maintain? Does the weed only kill short term? Like, you don't know. And with Jericho, here's the Jericho thing that I would be worried about if I was Kevin Smith, is that Jericho does so many things that I could see where he'd have like that, like not remember who directed Back to the Future. Because really, like, I would imagine he wanted to have a Back to the Future podcast. He doesn't have time to sit there and watch all 3 movies again. Right. Yeah. But Brad is obsessed with it. So it's just like, let me tee up Brad. We can do a Back to the Future podcast. However, when Jericho is performing, you and I both know that Jericho puts 100% effort. Like, even if it's just like, he'll spend 12 hours and the 12 hours building up to it, he'll be singularly focused on that thing. And I think that he's going to take this seriously, especially because Kevin Smith is a real opponent. So I feel like Chris Jericho is going to do an unexpected amount of work leading up to this, because here's the thing about Chris Jericho. He likes winning things.
Yes.
He likes to be the guy. He likes to win things. And I don't think he's showing up just for fun.
No, I spoke to him yesterday, which again was pretty surreal talking to him on the phone about the Schmoedown, right? And
you're calling Jericho to talk about your thing.
Yeah, and it was amazing. So when I was talking to him, and I was just like, "Oh, it's gonna be a lot of fun and everything too," and he's just like, "Oh yeah," I was like, "I'm in it to win," and I was like, "It's
it's gonna be a lot of fun." He's like, "Yeah, what's fun is winning." I'm there.
To him, it is, and that's who doesn't want that? Who doesn't want like you said, Jericho coming in, and the rock stars are heels, by the way. I don't know what to expect. That's the one thing I give notes to all my competitors. How am I giving notes to Jericho right now about, it's like, do what you want to do, dude. It's like, do what you want to do. Cut your promo however you want to do it. But it's like him and Smith, it's going to be so entertaining. I can't wait to see it. And we've been doing these pay-per-views for like our big matches that have been every week. This one we're putting on the channel. It's on youtube.com/the Schmoedown. It's going to be on, and it's a double main event because two of our big stars, Andrew Guy and Ben Bateman, it's a #1 contender shot. The winner will play the champion. That's going to be the first thing that you see for all like the hardcore fans and for new fans kind of coming in to see who these guys are. That we're just putting it on for free. We're letting all these people come in and watch it, and then they can get invested in it and watch the entire playlist. It's on season 7 of the playlist of the Schmoedown.
So the Kevin Smith Jericho match is going to be free or pay-per-view?
Free.
Oh my God! You guys are giving away the house.
I know. It's a double main event. It's free. It's going to be on next Friday, the 28th, and it'll be airing at 2 p.m. PST on 5 p.m. PST on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/the Schmoedown.
Well, I will be watching, and I do feel like it's pretty smart to get that big name. This is like your Floyd Mayweather Big Show match. Like don't worry, we're gonna have Edge versus Undertaker on there, but let's come and everybody look at Floyd Mayweather in the Big Show. But I think giving it away for free is a pretty smart thing just in terms of brand equity.
Yeah, you have to, because otherwise it's like, why do they, there's a lot of different reasons why, plus the fact it's just to see these guys going at it. And if you're browsing around and you don't have any idea what the hell the Schmoedown is, and you see Jericho and Smith's face on it,
watching,
and you see a versus, you're going to tune in to see what it is.
Dude, like, here are 3 things that I've liked since I was in high school. Movies, Kevin Smith, and Chris Jericho. Like I'm gonna watch the thing. You know what I mean? Like all 3 of those things. When I was in high school, I was like, these 3 things are 3 of the best things.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to work with Jericho when you were there? You did, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, we worked. So all I did was host the kick. All I've done is host the kickoff show. Yeah. So like, I didn't do anything on a kickoff show specifically with him. Okay. But we were on. He was there when I was there at the same time. Yeah. And I've known him for a really long time through the radio. He actually, it's so funny because Triple H, Mick Foley, and MVP are the 4 guys that are still around doing stuff that all knew me when I was like a coffee fetcher. Yeah. So they're all like, they're the guys that have known me for like 12, 13, 14 years because they were all doing Opie and Anthony. Right. So, so it's funny watching how everybody evolves. Yeah, isn't it nuts? It's true. And they never really go. You know who I think would be really good at the Schmoedown, by the way, is Xavier Woods. Oh, he'd be excellent. He's just one of these pop culture junkies. Like he's a video game guy, but any pop culture stuff I think you bring up with him. Yeah. Anyway, I think he's next. Well, and he gets the internet, right? Like he absolutely understands it. I think that's the thing. And because that's another reason why I'm glad I like talking to you about it is because wrestling fans really seem to get what the Schmoedown is. They really seem to understand the competition of it, the storyline part of it, like the over the top characters, the way that it's played, and UFC fans. Like we really have found that audience. So the more people, if you're listening to this and you're a wrestling fan, you want to check it out. I'd love to hear the input, to be honest, from wrestling fans, because that's kind of like that's the audience we're really going after. Excellent. Well, I'm glad we did this, man, and I hope everybody's going to be tuning in on Friday. And it's been fun. Yeah, same here, dude. I appreciate it. You should come on SEN. Also, we'd love to have you on there whenever you want. All right, awesome. Let's do it. Yeah. Say the word. All right, love movie. I love movies. Kristian Harloff and Kevin Smith. So I'm in the wheelhouse. Next time when they have their rematch, you can call the match. You can call the rematch, dude. In a heartbeat. All right. In a heartbeat. Done. I'm there. All right. Thanks, man. Yeah, brother.